You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 71 for November 11th, 2015. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's show, we talk about field fitness. We had an episode a ways back that talked about a similar topic, but this is different. We bring on a couple guests that aren't archaeologists, but that know fitness, and we also have another guest that is an archaeologist, and also she knows fitness. Why should you work out after doing a physically demanding job? What can you do in a hotel room without getting a gym membership? We'll answer these questions and more on today's show. Oh, and we had a few Skype issues and some lag, but I tried to clean most of it up. So put on your stretchy pants and get out your foam roller, because the CRM Archaeology Podcast starts right now. Welcome to the show, everyone. I don't have any of my normal CRM Archaeology co-hosts on today, but that's because this really isn't a CRM Archaeology podcast, although it's definitely related to the lifestyle of CRM Archaeology. So joining me today is Jonathan Sims. He's a personal trainer from Oregon right now. And we've got Jason Webster, who, yes, is my brother. He's in Washington State, and he has an MS in exercise physiology. He was an EMT. He is a firefighter in Spokane, Washington. And he's an amateur pro-sponsored OCR racer. We'll ask him what the hell that means later. And then Andy Zorn, who's actually working for me out here in Ridgecrest, California. And she was a Division I college athlete at the University of Louisville on the rowing team. So we're going to talk about fitness and nutrition and what the heck that has to do with archaeology. It really doesn't have anything to do with archaeology, but part of the reason that we do these podcasts and we keep people informed and educated is not just for your professional life, but your personal life as well. And if anybody's looked at my book, there's a lot of stuff in there about just, surviving as an archaeologist, and part of that is quality of life, and part of quality of life is personal health and nutrition. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about, and that's why I brought these people on, because they're all either doing or have done, pretty intense fitness regimens, and they know exactly what they're talking about to keep themselves healthy. And presumably, while they're working in their day jobs, they're doing these things as well. So let's kick it off with Jonathan, because I know Jonathan has been working with Andy and her boyfriend Chris, who's also working out here with an exercise program. Jonathan, why'd you guys get together and decide to do this? What's the benefit to them?
Well, I guess I'll just add on that I am Chris's brother.
That's right. Chris Sims's brother. Yeah, not my brother.
Right, yeah. Sorry, too many Chris's going on.
Yeah.
I guess, I love to, being a brother, I love to see my brother in pain. So, of course, I'll write him a workout routine. But no, Chris and Andy approached me. I've been working as a personal trainer and performance coach for a while now, and they approached me because they had some personal goals that they wanted for fitness. But I guess Andy in particular, Andy, you had voiced that you wanted to increase your performance out in the field, and there's certain considerations there of like why isn't work enough, to be good at work.
Well, I also would like Andy's performance increased in the field, but that's for different reasons.
Well, good time to bring that up.
12 miles isn't enough for you.
12 miles is no. We want to hit 13 tomorrow.
Well, yeah, we're working on that in the routine. But yeah, so I guess why should she work out? If the job she's doing is physically demanding, and everything I've heard from talking to my brother and talking to Andy, you guys have a tough gig out there. Walking all day, miles and miles in the heat. Leaning over, doing what you got to do, and I mean the simple truth of why you should work out if your job is physically demanding already is to become more physically resilient to the job.
That's a good point.
There are a lot of situations as an archaeologist where your body's capabilities and health will be tested over and over again. If you don't have enough strength, be it in your muscles, in your posture, or even an understanding of how to safely and effectively use your body in a physically demanding situation, then you're going to get wrecked. just being out in the field isn't enough. You need to be stronger than what the field demands in order to be resilient to it. I guess a simple example would be, who's better at lifting 100 pounds? Is it the person who lifts 100 pounds every time they work out forever? Or is it the person who progressively develops the strength to lift 300 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the latter. To them, that weight, that stress on their body has become insignificant. They not only can very easily handle it, but they are at much less of a risk for injury when exposed to that stress because they have become resilient to so much more. This example holds true for an archaeologist working out in the field. They can handle themselves better and be at less risk of injury if they train their bodies in addition to what their job demands. And this includes muscular strength, muscular endurance, posture, joint mobility, and of course cardiovascular abilities. But I guess that's exactly what Andy and Chris and I are working on with their routines, is making them more capable animals. So
Okay, now we have perfect examples of this on the podcast as far as working out and building yourself up for the thing that you're going to do. Both Andy and Jason are Andy did that in college and is doing it now for work, and Jason, he's doing it. We'll get into why he's doing it, but some of the competitions he's doing, but also because he's a firefighter. They have to stay in peak physical condition to do what they do. So Andy, because we're talking to Jonathan first, let's go to you. Can you tell us first tell us what you did on the rowing team, because it was news to me when you told me, and then it was kind of surprising when you told me that you still had to do all the same workouts with the rowing team and do all that other stuff, but it totally makes sense because of what you had to do. So why don't you let people know what you did, and then what the types of workouts and stuff you would have to do to stay fit to do that job.
Yeah, so I was a coxswain on the rowing team, which is a bit of a funny term if you've never heard of a rowing team. But I was basically like the little coach in the boat that steered the boat and it was in charge of everyone else. So I was basically in charge of keeping everyone else fit and on time and doing exactly what they needed to be doing at all times 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big job all through high school and college. And with that, I had to not only earn the respect of the girls on my team, but keep fitness up myself so that I was able to stay the correct weight and, work out with the girls. And,
Mm-hmm.
If I'm telling them to go on a run, then going on a run with them earns a lot of respect.
That's a typical leadership technique, is to go along with the people you're telling what to do, rather than just say, "Hey, go do that," and then I'll see you at the coffee shop.
Yeah,
Right.
They like you a lot more afterwards if you just do it with them.
Right.
So, yeah. So I ended up being pretty fit at the end of college, and then it transitioned really easily into my archaeology career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently just coming out of like my first year in CRM, so I'm still pretty new to it. But so far, like I've done some pretty demanding projects, and I've been able to like maneuver pretty easily between digging out east and then coming out west and walking, as we said, a lot of miles every day. And I feel like maybe if I hadn't kept up with my fitness so much, then I would have gotten injured a lot easier, partly because I'm a very petite individual, but also just because, it just catches up to you 10 days on, 4 days off, doing the same thing every day that perhaps you weren't prepared for, and you can never really be prepared for anything in this industry. A job could end 1 month and then the next month you're doing something completely different. And so you have to be prepared for everything fitness wise if you want to be successful.
Or you might not do something for a month, which is equally damaging.
definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah. You got to keep it going during that off time. So many people are just destroyed when they come back in the springtime for their first job in, say, February, maybe March, April timeframe. And you just haven't done anything all winter, and they're completely soft and broke and, don't know what they're doing.
Right. And it leads to injury.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, every older archaeologist that I know has knee problems, back problems, things like that. And, like you were saying, and I'm guilty of this myself, quite honestly, a lot of times. I mean, I'll try to stretch out like during the day, but when we get back to the truck at the end of the day and we've had that last final push just to get back to the truck and to get out of there, and in some of these areas, we've got a minimum of 30 to 45-minute drive to get back to the apartment, sometimes an hour and a half drive or more. And do any of us really stretch out? No, we get our stuff in, it's hot, we want to get done. We grab something cold to drink and we just sit down in the truck for the next hour and a half after just
Right.
physically working out and burning 1,000 calories plus in some cases, and we don't stretch, we don't do anything. So that's definitely something I've thought about as an employer, trying to enforce, trying to just have like a stretching routine before and after work. And I'm not sure how enforceable that is. Like, can you make people do that? Is that part of their job description? But I don't know. Maybe you just do it and say, "Hey, we're not leaving until I stretch out, so you may as well stretch out too." I don't know. So,
Well, just
Right.
challenge them also to say, hey, stretch for me this set,
mm-hmm,
and see how you feel when you get out of the rig. When you get back,
mm-hmm,
and then next set don't stretch. You know,
yeah,
and then let's see what kind of benefit it is. Just do a little experiment and show them how much of a benefit, because I guarantee they're going to feel better if they stretch out and cool down before they sit down for an hour and a half. Because we've all done it, had a hard workout and gotten in the car and gone home without stretching. I know I've done it.
mm-hmm.
And you're like, holy moly, when you get out of the car.
Well, this is a good
Yeah,
way
you
to
feel awful.
yeah, this is a good time to bring you in, Jason.
Yeah.
When you're out doing stuff, like let's say before we even get into your athlete stuff, what about being a firefighter? You guys must have some times where, even if it is just training, where you guys are just exerting yourself to the maximum, and you're wearing all the gear, you're doing all this stuff. Do you guys actively have some sort of stretching thing you do after that, or do most people just go back and sit down at the fire station and clean the gear?
Not typically, because you've always got something to do. I mean, if we're on a big fire, you're there. The biggest concern once all the work is done is getting your rig back in service.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're done on scene, you're released, you get in the truck, you go back to the station, you clean up all your stuff. Usually you're starting to hydrate right away, because the gear and all the weight, I mean, we've got about 90 pounds worth of weight on us with the air pack and all of our turnouts and our tools that are in our pockets,
Mm-hmm.
our axes and sledgehammers and everything else we carry with us. And so, I mean, I'm already a very sweaty person on top of it, but I lose several pounds of water just on a half an hour fire, just for the big push. Because usually the main containment part of a fire call is only about 20-30 minutes of, super hard work. But, typically we're rehydrating and then getting all our stuff back together. And then you've kind of lost your window at that point. Um, by the time you put everything back together to really get anything done. But typically guys won't do anything. um, to me, in my personal fitness level, it's such a different kind of workout that it doesn't I wouldn't say I don't need it, but it's just different, you
Right.
know. And you're usually more concerned with refueling rather than stretching,
Mm-hmm.
because you do burn a lot of calories. And with the type of job that it is, um, when you're working out, you get your workout done, you go home, or you're at work doing CRM, you do your work, you go home. You're not going to get an emergency call at 9 o'clock at night after you just did 13 miles to go out and do it again.
Right.
And
Not
so
typically.
we're more concerned with, well, unless my brother gets an idea and says, "Hey, that's a good idea.
Right.
We should do it."
Don't get any ideas.
Yeah. And so, we need to be ready to go, and we need to be refueled. It's the whole, when you get on with the fire department, they tell you, if you're hungry, eat. If you're tired, sleep. If you got to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Because anytime you lay there at night and you feel like you got to go to the bathroom and you sit there, it's okay, I'm not going to go right now, then the tones go off every time. And so then you can't go. So then you're holding it through the whole call, whether it's a fire call or an EMS call or anything else. So it's a little different, because you got to be prepared at all times for your 24-hour shift.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely not going to be given time on scene to do it. And so, that's why, to be in a good general physical health, to be able to stand that busy 24-hour shift, you know, is more advantageous than, actually doing it on shift.
Yeah.
And so, but there's several schools of thought also with guys that work. Some guys want to conserve their energy on shift and not work out.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys, like myself, I'm going to work out before I go to work and I'm going to work out at work. But because I see it, sometimes we may have a slow shift, sometimes we may have a busy shift, but either way, I'm going to get my workout in. So,
yeah. Well, that's first off, 24-hour shifts, huh? I'm thinking headlamps and no.
I don't know about that.
Well, let's bring your extracurricular activities into this because you're probably different than most of the people you work with. I mean, I'm sure guys work out and they do stuff, but tell everybody what you're doing.
Yeah, I got a couple years ago. I did a Tough Mudder with some buddies, and kind of got hooked on the whole mud run obstacle course racing. My wife bought me a ticket for a Spartan race in Montana. Did one, finished fairly well, even with bronchitis in an open heat. Did some more. I've never really been a runner, but the obstacle course racing is kind of I've always been a strength athlete. And it's kind of a combination between strength and endurance. You're required to carry heavy things. I'd never run more than 6 or 7 miles when I started. Now I regularly do, 12, 13, 14, 15 mile trail runs. And it's just, it's increased my ability to work actually at the fire department tenfold. I used to think I was in shape, but now I'm just at a whole different level of fitness. But I did about 12 races this year, qualified for the obstacle course racing world championship, finished 7th in my heat of the whole world, out of 137 people that qualified. And so it's a kick in the pants. I love it. It's fun. It's great competition. It gives me a reason to go out and do something. It gives me a reason to do lots of burpees, which I think are the greatest exercise on the planet. If all you did was burpees, I'm not even kidding. If you just did burpees extended for a long period of time, like I said, I was joking about the 500, but I one time did 500 burpees. It took me 52 and a half minutes. But I was laying in a pool of sweat that I couldn't compare to anything else, and it destroyed me. It was full-on burpees all the way down. We call them Spartan burpees, belly to the floor. So,
and I'll put hopefully a video link from YouTube on what a burpee is for those that don't know.
Yeah, no, great exercise. There was a guy that one of the Dateline shows or something interviewed years ago. And he was on death row, and the guy was just huge. You see those prison inmates that are just big, like they work out all the time. But this guy was in solitary on death row, and I don't know, it was some interesting case or something. So they were interviewing him. And the guy just on a side note said, "Hey, what do you do to work out to stay so fit?" And the guy said, "I do 1,000 burpees a day every day, and that's all I do." And the guy was big. He had a big chest, big shoulders, arms, lats, legs, everything, because the burpee encompasses almost every movement, every muscle group in your body. And so, it's great exercise, and it, gets your blood flowing and gets your heart rate up. So it's cardio, if you do a lot. So I'm a big proponent of body weight exercises. So.
Nice. Well, we'll get into that a little bit later. First, we're going to take a short break and back in a minute. Hello, everyone. Chris Webster here from the Archaeology Podcast Network, and we're giving away an iPad Mini 4 to one of our listeners. The iPad Mini 4 came out in September. It's a 16-gigabyte space gray iPad with AT&T cellular-ready antenna. All that means is it comes with GPS. You do not need to get a data plan. And you don't even need to be on AT&T if you never plan to get a data plan. It just has GPS. It also has a fingerprint sensor and Apple Pay ready and all the good perks that come with that. So it's a good iPad. We use them in the field. There are 2 easy ways to enter. 1, do a Profiles in CRM interview before December 15th, 2015, or recommend someone for an interview. You'll both get an entry once the interview is posted. If you want to know more about Profiles in CRM, go to www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/profiles. All the questions are listed right there. The other way to enter is to like the APN Facebook page and share it with your friends on Facebook to get the word out about our awesome podcasts. The winner will be announced December 16th, 2015 at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So get your entries in, send me those emails for people that want to do the Profiles in CRM podcast, and good luck to everyone. iMac, take us out with a binary solo. Okay, we're back. And so now we're going to talk about building a workout routine. I think maybe some people have been listening and they're like, okay, I need to start doing something. I need to get into this. I need to see what I can do about this. But I'm living in a hotel room and it's temporary and I'm on to the next job in a couple weeks or a couple months. What can I do to start, increasing my physical fitness after work? Jonathan, you want to kick this off and tell people possibly what they can do? Maybe start off by saying what you've done for Chris and Andy and how you're getting them going.
Well, yeah, definitely. I will say right off the bat that the most effective thing to do would be to find professional help to develop a foundation. But if all you have is a hotel room and that's it, then I guess that's another consideration. With Chris, my brother, and at, I believe, the gym on base, where you guys are, and so they're using barbells and dumbbells and whatnot, and that's for like I was alluding to earlier, you need to become stronger than what the job demands. So they're lifting more weight than what they typically would have to deal with at work, so that they become more resilient to it. But as far as what a person should do, I guess it depends on the goal, because people can have a personal goal. Maybe they want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or something, and they want bulging biceps and stuff, and that's one thing. But I guess in this podcast we want to focus on what should a person be doing in order to better themselves in this field, in the field of archaeology. Am I right?
Yeah, and I think also a focus on, for some people, possibly a focus on weight loss or at least just toning a little bit. And also a big one would be a focus on, like you said earlier, not hurting yourself. What can you do to strengthen, say, your back muscles and to watch your knees, and things like that, things we use all the time. And then people are on the East Coast doing shovel testing or using, entirely different muscle sets than those of us that are out here basically going for a hike every day.
Right.
So, there would be, I think initially everybody needs to focus on that. Whether or not if you want to be, Arnold Schwarzenegger, my guess is you're probably listening to this podcast while you're doing a workout. So, you're already like, yeah, I got that. So, this is for people who maybe aren't doing anything or aren't doing enough, so what, keeping that in mind, how do we proceed?
Well, yeah. So, I guess in this perspective, whether you're just starting out or you have some experience under your belt, in order there to be some crossover from what you do in your workouts to your performance in a particular physical task, in this case archaeology, whatever that may mean,
Mm-hmm.
West Coast or East Coast, but the exercises you do have to not only include the muscles utilized in those tasks, but also need to resemble the ways you move and load your body out in the field. And this is the principle of specificity. During a day in the field, an archaeologist may have to pick up loads in various positions, be it their backpack or whatever, carry those loads a certain distance, dig, not so much for you guys, but maybe, back east. And all around
we dig occasionally.
Okay, so dig and all around, I'm assuming everybody has to do a ton of walking and leaning over.
Mm-hmm.
So exercises that strengthen the back, hips, and legs for repetitive leaning over, getting back up, moving weight around would include things like the deadlift, the squat, and the lunge. These movements also help teach you to keep your spine steady while under stress, as do abdominal specific stability exercises like the plank and side plank. I'm sure most people have heard of those. But upper body strength is also important to develop, even if there isn't much of a demand to move heavy objects around with your arms alone. Walking around all day, looking at the ground with or without a pack on will cause the front of your upper body to accumulate a lot of tightness. Your tight muscles will pull you into a really undesirable posture and cause you pain if left unchecked. This pain can show up in a lot of places, but your low back will definitely be a place that many people will suffer pain in. And that's why it's so important to, train these movements to balance out these stresses, especially things like rowing motions, to help balance out your posture, especially in your upper body. Stretching and mobility movements targeted on those places that are tightened by your job is also a must to keep your body in alignment. So it's not only important what muscles you are using during work, but also the ones you're not. So like I said, wearing a pack all day tightens the front of your body, but you might not be using your back muscles, your upper back muscles a lot. So you got to pay attention to that. If there's too much of an imbalance, your posture will get dragged into bad positions and you'll hurt for it. But as far as specific things, people don't need to be doing, you would call them split routines, where people split up body. That'd be like a bodybuilder thing to do. You're like, oh, today's leg day, today's chest and bi day, something like that. If you're looking for performance, and Jason, I'm not sure, I think you would agree with me on this, that you should be training your entire body, not isolating different pieces of it.
Yep. And when I learned from my CrossFit days, we actually do CrossFit. We call it, because CrossFit is a trademarked name. We actually teach what we call functional fitness, is the name that we changed from CrossFit, because really the tenets of functional fitness or CrossFit are the whole kind of encompassing idea of fitness, to include strength, muscular strength and endurance, cardiorespiratory endurance, flexibility, balance, agility, all of these components to be good at everything across the board. And, if we're looking at, a basic hotel workout, and assuming that, and you have to come from the basis that you assume that people would have to know how to do basic exercises. And I think that's what you started with, by saying, you got to seek some sort of professional help, or be motivated to watch YouTube videos on how to do a proper air squat, how to do a proper push up, how to do a proper plank, a lunge, etc. Because a lot of these things you can do, their basic body weight movements, can really help you gain strength and fitness. The burpee, pull ups, sit ups, crunches, there's a whole list of things that you can do with little to absolutely no equipment. If you had a physio ball, a foam roller, and a pull-up bar, and a couple of bands, I mean, you could get gobs of exercises done and be super fit, just by doing those exercises with, maybe $70 to $80 worth of equipment if you're buying a ball and a roller and a pull-up bar that goes in a doorway.
Oh, for sure.
You can get tons of stuff done, but again, you have to go off the basis that people know how to use this stuff. Are they motivated enough to go on the website and look up? Because YouTube has a gazillion, form. You just type in, like I saw an exercise earlier I hadn't heard of, and it was the it was the 8-point burpee or 8-point seal fit something or other that some Battle Frog series does for their penalty if they don't complete an obstacle. But whatever, I hadn't heard of it, so I looked it up. It went to a YouTube link. Boom, there it is. Perfect form for the 8-point, whatever it was called. And so I've used that multiple times when I get workouts, or I check out workouts online, where there's an exercise that that's a kind of a weird name maybe for an exercise I already know, but somebody has to be motivated to go do that. But there's a lot of things out there that could work for somebody in that scenario. And I'm sure you've heard of this, but using a deck of cards, and doing a deck of cards WOD. And if somebody doesn't know what a WOD is, it's kind of a CrossFit term for workout of the day. So somebody will say, hey, I'm going to do this WOD, or hey, my WOD was this, or hey, my WOD was that. And that's their workout for the day. But they have apps on the phones, on your smartphone. And I've got a deck of cards WOD on the phone. And basically what it does is you can program it for 4 different exercises, because there's 4 suits of cards, your spades, your clubs, your hearts, and your diamonds. And you could do push-ups for one of them. You could do squats, just air squats, for another. You could do lunges. You could do pull-ups, sit-ups. So pick 4. And then basically you push start. The 10 of hearts comes up. Okay, hearts is squats, so I got to do 10 squats. All right, you're done with that one. You push it again. All right, 4 of diamonds. Well, diamonds is push ups. Okay, I had to go do 4 push ups. And you run through the entire deck of cards, or you do it with a partner if it's a little too hard to do the whole deck. So you could do this as a crew at the end of the day, go through the deck twice with 4 people, and everybody does, 26 exercises essentially, because there's 52 cards. A fun but easy way with no equipment to get sweaty, get your body weight exercises in. And so there's different things that you could do, different tools that you can use. I am I tend towards being a strength athlete, and it's funny, people ask me what I do because I carry quite a bit of muscle, but I'm trying to actually get rid of as much muscle as I can so I can run faster. Um, I do no weightlifting whatsoever yet. I practically look like a bodybuilder, but all I do is pull ups and push ups and burpees and sit ups. But it just depends on body type also. But you can get pretty fit, and I've learned this now, um, just by doing body weight exercises. So,
Andy, what kind of workouts are you guys doing after work?
Well, we're going to the gym and doing squats. I do front squats. I have kind of a bad shoulder, and so he's kind of managed my workout so that I'm not doing too many shoulder workouts, and then the ones that I do are easier on my shoulder. And so that's really nice to kind of have Jonathan to talk to and say like, oh well, this exercise really hurt, and this one felt really good. So I'm able to like keep up with work while still getting a good workout in. But basically, if I ever have like any problems with doing an exercise, I either go to YouTube, like Jason suggested, or I go to Jonathan's webpage. What is it, Jonathan? Beef Demon Fitness?
Yeah. Which I'm sure the
Yeah.
the name is great out of context, as I'm sure Chris Webster, you found out when I first emailed you for this podcast.
Yeah, I almost deleted the email from Beef Demon before I saw podcast in the subject line.
Oh yeah.
Yes. You have to go and read the story about it. But
Okay.
we can do a link in the show notes to it. But he's got a ton of videos that show you how to do those exercises. But I've been doing less body weights and more weights with the bar and dumbbells after talking to Jonathan, just because I've been doing a lot of body weights for the majority of my life, and I'm staying relatively the same, and I'm wanting to start putting on more muscle, and I need to start eating more as well. So it's kind of where I'm at right now.
well, and that's an exactly a good point, and that's exactly opposite of what I'm doing. But what that says is, it doesn't say that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. It says that everybody's body is different and reacts. Because my body wants to be a strength.
Totally,
my body wants to be a strength athlete. Your body wants to be a runner. But if we have different goals,
it does.
yeah, I mean, my body does not want to be a runner. I mean, it doesn't want to be a runner at all. I mean, I got huge quads, and I don't do squats ever. I specifically away from the bar because my legs will blow up, and people hate me that want big, huge legs. And they ask me, what do I do? What do you do for your calves? Your calves are huge. I haven't done a calf raise since I was in high school, and didn't know I shouldn't do them because my calves are already massive. And so, it's just, everybody's different, right, and everybody has different goals. And so, again, Jonathan kind of opened up with seeking some professional help, at least for a brief amount of time, so you can kind of get a basis of, all right, this is where you're at, this is where you're looking. They can tell you kind of just by looking at you, a good personal trainer can, what your body is kind of tendency is to want. The skinny guy always wants big muscles, and the big guy wants bigger muscles, but the skinny guy's probably never going to get there because the genetics just aren't there.
Right. And
so everybody's different, and there's a million different workout programs, and each program isn't going to work for everybody.
And I totally agree with how you sort of started out saying that seek out some help, even for just a little bit, because, and this is going to sound funny coming from a personal trainer, but, no personal training, relationship, like, for example, like between like me and Andy and my brother, that shouldn't last forever. The goal of working with a professional is that you become educated yourself, and that, one day you can do this. You can take care of, all the thinking and the strategy required to do it. And, as Jason, what you're saying is, it it takes some understanding to figure out what's going to work for different people with different body types, because, obviously your body type is one way, and, people will have, you know, resistant frames that don't want to put on any muscle. So,
Yeah,
it just
for
takes
sure.
some understanding.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I got my degree in college in this, and I would never tell anybody. I mean, I'm smart enough to say, okay, well, I know what my body needs, but I'm not going to tell everybody. Like, I'm not going to tell Andy, don't do your barbell weights, because the barbell weights don't work for me and my goals right now.
Exactly.
But your goals are different, and your body is different, and just body weight exercises
Exactly.
is
And that's
awesome
also
for me
why I've
right now,
started that's
but
also
obviously
why I've
not
like
working for you.
started seeking professional help from Jonathan, because basically what I was doing was working for me at the time, and then as I changed my goals, I needed help to, achieve those goals. And so getting education from Jonathan on how to, be more functionally fit and being able to perform better in the field is always good.
Yeah.
If you think about like, is this worth?
Yeah, one thing, kind of a little bit off topic, that I wanted to think about and throw in there was, you guys were talking about bending over and leaning over a lot. I'll ask you this, my brother Chris, when you were in Africa, doing, I know you went down there for a time.
Mm-hmm.
What position, when people are working with their hands or cooking, what position are the native people in Africa in when they're doing that?
Wow.
Typically.
I guess we saw, we saw one person that was cooking a lot. We didn't work a lot with the natives, but
Okay.
they were generally upright, like
Okay.
I feel like they had decent posture from my memories.
Yeah, but do they do typically a lot of stuff in the deep squat?
Oh yeah, squatting down
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, when we were working out in the field, they were, almost always squatting rather than sitting on rocks like we were.
Yeah, and that's kind of a typical thing of fitness, is how long can you sit? Can you comfortably sit in a deep squat and work with your hands on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, if you can get strong, just completely squatted down in that deep squat position, and your core is strong enough to hold you there, and your legs are strong enough to hold you there, and you could sit with the weight on your heels and not on your toes like your body's meant to be. It's just not a position that we work functionally very often. I challenge people to, all the time when I'm teaching my functional fitness classes with the fire department, and I get a new batch of guys in, maybe new recruits or whatever, to just sit in a squat for 5 minutes, and can they do it? And almost nobody can do it. They can't just sit comfortably in a squat. And that's something to say about our posture and how our bodies used to do things, back before we had tables and chairs and, did all things differently. But if archaeologists out in the field, CRM archaeologists, could get comfortable in that deep squat, then they could actually sit there while they're surveying something on the ground. And this may be totally off base because I don't really know what you guys do. But if you could get comfortable sitting in that squat position while you're digging around on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
instead of bent over and having all that pressure on the low back, it could possibly be a better position for you.
Well, that's the squatting thing is a really good point, because we do actually do that a lot.
Yeah.
We do that. We do that whenever we find something, you'll bend down. It might not be for 5 minutes or anything, but it's at least for a little while. And if you've been hiking for 6 miles before you go ahead and squat down, you can really feel it. You can definitely feel it, especially if you're not prepared for it. And then on, say, an excavation, or the people back east that are doing shovel testing, there's frequent times where you will squat down and have to, and you should sit down there for a while. It's probably more conducive to your workflow if you were able to do that. But a lot of people won't do that. They'll sit up, or they'll sit down. They'll just sit down on the ground because they can't squat for that long. So it's actually a really good thing to make a point on and work on.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to take another short break, and we're going to come back and talk about nutrition after we hear about another podcast on the APN.
The Archaeology and Ale podcast presents a monthly series of lectures on all aspects of archaeology. These lectures are part of the Archaeology in the City program, hosted by the University of Sheffield in England, and are held at the Red Deer pub near the end of the month. The podcast can be heard a few days later. Check out the Red Deer if you're in the area, or find this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
All right, we're back, and now we're going to bring in the final component to all this. The final component is actually doing it, but the the final part of what you do is nutrition. So, I'll start off with my story. I'm not a small guy. I've never been a small guy, and I used to blame that on genetics, but quite honestly, it was, part of it's genetics, I guess, but part of it's just the way I was raised, and my brother could probably attest to this too, because we had a lot to overcome with the way we were raised. I wasn't really in sports that much. I mean, I was in wrestling and I did a little track and stuff like that, but I didn't really have my heart in it. I didn't really care that much. And what's that?
I said hamburger helper.
Hamburger helper. Yeah, that's my mom knew how to cook 365 different kinds of hamburger and mashed potatoes, and that's what we ate. And oh yeah. So and I never had any training. I mean, I went into the Navy and didn't learn really a whole lot about fitness there. I mean, they just forced us to work out occasionally and then take a fitness test every 6 months, but it didn't really tell us how to pass it, and how to live our lives as healthy people. So, and then I get into archaeology, and I was telling these guys over the break, I was like, until now, really, until the last couple of years, I would, because I didn't know any better, I would just, maybe eat something for breakfast, probably not, but it would be something really light if I did have anything. And I mean, worst case scenario, you're talking like a muffin or something from the hotel, continental breakfast, the most horrible thing you could probably ever eat. And then probably not eat anything through the morning, maybe a snack at the first break, but then at lunch, have a massive, ridiculous lunch and then go the rest of the day without eating, and then just be starving when I got home from work, and maybe have a snack then that was completely unhealthy, and then probably way too big of a dinner, and then go to sleep not too long after that. So that's probably the worst thing you could possibly do. Whereas now I don't have really any big meals throughout the day. I have a lot of little small meals. I don't really even eat lunch. I have some snacks. I have some bars. I have some nuts. I'll have some fresh fruit, things like that. And I'll just have something like every hour and a half while I'm working. I've got them easily accessible in my pack. I don't even have to stop and take it off. I just grab something, I eat it, I take in those calories, and I put the wrapper in the other side of my pack, and I keep on going. So, Jonathan, why don't you start this off and first tell me exactly what was wrong with the first way I was doing things, and what's wrong with the way I'm doing things now. No, what can people do to increase just without talking about supplements yet and all that stuff, just basic stuff, basic eating habits for the type of lifestyle that we live.
Oh yeah. I guess pointing out the wrongs, the evils that you were doing originally, is just cramming way too many nutrients in at once. And like we were talking during the break, your body can only deal and actually make use of so many nutrients at once, and anything else, you're just gonna put it into long-term storage or piss it out. And so the thing that you changed is is one of the foundational things to do is just start eating, start spreading your nutrition out throughout the day. Don't skip meals. And beyond that, I think the first thing for somebody to do once they understand that they need to actually eat throughout the day as opposed to all at once is just understand what you're actually eating. It's more than just, oh, I need to, put something in my face hole. It's not just, I'm hungry, I need to eat. It's, what do you need to eat? You know, all food is made up of macronutrients, and those nutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And you need them in different proportions for different reasons. And, you know, those reasons would vary depending on what the goal you're trying to accomplish is.
Hmm.
So, but I mean, regardless of what the goal is, you have to understand what it is you're eating. You know, is it full of sugar? What are the ingredients in it? Is it super processed? Is it just full of preservatives and sugar and stuff that you don't really need? If you're really active throughout the day, or if you work out a lot, you're breaking your body down, and so you definitely need a an amount of protein, which for most people, it's going to be more protein than they think they need. But you need protein to build yourself back up, and uh, if along with that being super active, you also need carbohydrates to help refuel you and fuel your activity and refuel you for further activity. And Jason, you were making the point of beyond that, stop eating processed nonsense. Eat whole grains, and I don't know if you want to comment on that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's processed foods are, I think, the downfall of our society. I mean, there's people out there that are linking it to autism and all these other developmental disabilities and everything else. You just look at the ingredients of what you're eating. If you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it. I mean, there's all these chemicals and preservatives and food colorings and all these different things that are in food. And I'm not perfect. I mean, I do eat some processed foods, but I do the best that I can to cook home cooked meals. And I know that's difficult in the hotel setting, um, but you can definitely make better choices, of eating more salads, with a solid protein, um, and just going more of the whole foods route. Having a decent breakfast that isn't, out of a box, even if it's
Hmm.
a healthy kind of, if instead of a box of cereal, if you do have to eat out of a hotel and you've got some milk and you've got cereal, maybe do like a healthy granola or something, something that's going to last you a little bit longer, something that's more of a complex carbohydrate and not just a straight up sugar. And snacking throughout the day on things like nuts, that have proteins and healthy fats in them, good nuts with a dried fruit mix. And if you need a little bit of sweet with a little bit of chocolate in it, isn't going to hurt you. I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself, because I think a lot of us are social eaters, myself very much included. You got to enjoy what you're eating. And a lot of people think, as soon as you say, I'm eating healthy, they automatically think, oh, that's gross.
I've got a friend here at the fire department who's a vegetarian, and a lot of the guys give him a hard time because at the fire department everybody eats meat. It's barbecue this, roast that, steak this, and but I tell you what, that guy makes a heck of a side dish. He can make vegetables taste phenomenal, you know, and um, and so it's just it's getting creative with your food. Again, with the exercise, like we said, we have to have a willing participant. You have to be willing to go out there and learn some new things, learn some proper techniques,
Hmm.
be willing to seek it out. If you don't want to do it, it's not just going to fall in your lap. And it's the same thing with nutrition. If you don't want to eat healthier, you're going to fall back on going and grabbing McDonald's. You're going to go fall back on, grabbing something out of the deli, the hot counter, at Safeway or something. Um, it's easy to eat crummy. It takes work and it takes effort to prepare your own food and to eat properly. I mean, it's an all day affair to plan out and eat proper things. I mean, I'm already thinking in the morning, because I cook for my family and for my family at the fire department. Um, I'm already getting up in the morning and thinking, okay, what am I going to make for lunch? Do I need to go shopping this morning? What time do I need to start dinner? Because I'm going to make a healthy meal. Um, what do I need to go shopping for? How many ingredients do I need, et cetera, et cetera? Am I going to prepare this for the rest of the week? Is it a recipe that I'm going to make 3 or 4 times the normal amount? Because then we're going to have a healthy alternative for lunch the next day and the next day to have this home cooked meal, at at lunch or dinner for a subsequent night when we're busy. And again, with archaeology, and as busy as you guys are, and is on the road in hotels, again, that's a subject that's hard to preach to with that kind of eating. But I think it could probably be done with a little bit of effort and a little bit of ingenuity.
Okay. I do have to say something about one of the things you said, Jason. I agree with all your points on eating, but I do disagree as a skeptic. I disagree on one thing that I do hear. I do hear a lot of people say, which is the whole, if you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it thing, because some things are put in there as their unpronounceable chemical name because of copyright and because of patent, because we know it's another thing. Like, for example, how much 1,3,7 trimethylpurine dione did you have today?
Yeah. And what is that?
Caffeine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Too much.
I didn't have any of that.
Right. So I think it goes back to both your guys' points, though, on know what you're eating. I mean, you can look at the ingredients, and if I would almost say it's quantity over pronounceability. If there's 7,000 ingredients on the side of that label and they've jammed them all in, that's probably a sign that it's something you should probably avoid. But if it's got say 4 ingredients, then there's probably something better to it because it's got less added to it. That'd be my.
But hey,
my
how
take on
how about the product that doesn't need an ingredients list? A
Well,
bag of spinach.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
an apple.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So, Andy, you've got some information on cooking on the road because you're well experienced at that at this point. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, so cooking on the road, as everyone already said, you have to be like really willing to put in the extra effort. You can't just say, "Oh, I'll work it out," and then you just end up falling back on McDonald's. But so for a while, I was doing 5 days on, 2 days off, and on those 2 days off, I'd be going home to my kitchen and I'd be prepping meals for the 5 days on. And so I would have in my mini fridge in my hotel 5 dinners that I had already pre-cooked, and I know exactly what went into them. I knew exactly what I'd be eating that week. And if the crew ever went out for a meal, I was okay with joining them, and just making the choices that would help me recover from the day and also work towards the next day. So choosing things like a Greek salad or over pizza.
Mm-hmm. Guess what? Pizza is so tasty.
It sure is. And you know what? You can make it yourself, and you can make it really, really well with whole ingredients. I'm not saying you can't enjoy pizza. It's just you can't enjoy pizza from Domino's and expect to be getting like
I did try the
every
cauliflower.
week,
Yeah. I did try the cauliflower pizza crust once, and it was okay. It was a little tough.
Was
But
it close
so good,
to the
right?
real thing?
Yeah.
It was different.
Well, and Andy's saying, it definitely does take an added level of effort to try to consciously eat because, for somebody that's not, that's a bit of willpower they're not used to, exercising. But what can be even more frustrating is, making that effort to eat healthy, and every meal, you have these super healthy combinations of food, but it still might not be, and this is a word I really like to use in this term, is appropriate. It might, even if it's healthy, your entire day's diet might not be appropriate for your goals. And this could be, say somebody gets angry at themselves. They're like, all right, that's it. I'm eating healthy from here on out. So they plan their day out. They got eggs, they get some like whole grain toast in the morning. They have a nice snack. They eat a bunch of quinoa and whatnot. They fill their day with these healthy, complex carbohydrates, and on paper it's like, oh yeah, that looks really healthy. In isolation, those meals look really good together. But, if somebody's goal is to, let's say, lose fat, that's, I would say, most of America, wants to slim down a little bit. Even if you're eating healthy, you can still be eating too many of certain nutrients, in this case, carbohydrates, for your body to effectively lose any fat. And that can be crushing for somebody to be putting in that level of effort to, cook their meals, prepare their meals in advance, and they don't see any progress towards their goals despite all their efforts. And that's something to be really careful about. And another reason why, if you're starting out, you should definitely seek professional help, not only for learning how to properly move your body and exercise, but also to understand, not only what it is you're eating, but why you're eating so much of it or in that proportion. Because, like I said, depending on your goals, eating healthy might not be appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
In our last few minutes here, I want to bring something up because I think people are probably often confused on this, and as well as myself. When we're working, especially, it's getting cooler and into the fall, so maybe this isn't a huge problem for most people, but when we were working over the summer here and it's 100+ degrees and there's no wind and it's just terrible and we're all hot and stuff like that, we're always concerned with electrolytes and replenishing electrolytes and stuff like that. What do you think somebody should do? Because usually what anybody does here is they'll drink some sort of drink with electrolytes in it. Like the typical go-to is, say, Gatorade, or one of my guys drinks Smart Water all the time that has electrolytes in it. What do you guys think about that? Is that a sound thing to do, or what should people be? Is just drinking water fine throughout the day for most people, but on the really bad days you should supplement with something else? Or what do you think about that?
I'll
Jason?
step in.
Yeah.
I'll step in on that one because I do a lot of I'm around that a lot with all the athletes, different Facebook posts and everybody that I'm around with at the competitions. There's several different products that I think Gatorade, Powerade, and that kind of drink is pretty much for professional athletes. If you want to look at what they're using, that's a thing of the past. It's a lot of sugar. You look at you just look at how your mouth feels after drinking a small bottle of Gatorade. You just feel all gummed up. Um, there's a lot of products out there because you don't need the sugar. I think Andy would agree with me, or Jonathan would agree with me. Those quick, simple sugars are just going to give you a spike. Um, you're going to have a crash afterwards. And when you're looking at, okay, I'm sweating out all this sodium and potassium and everything else, and I need electrolytes, look at something like Nuun tablets, Nuun. It's more of an electrolyte replenishment with very few calories. You're getting a lot of sodium, potassium, all the things that you need without that kind of gummy aftertaste. The water stays more of a water consistency. It has a slight flavor to it if you have a problem with drinking just straight water, which I know some people have. Pretty easy on the stomach. There's another one that I just discovered called Scratch Labs, and it's SKR, Scratch Labs. And theirs is an all-natural product. They actually have a ground up orange rind in the orange flavor. You get a lot of macronutrients, a lot of micronutrients out of it. And I've been using that in my hydration pack on long workouts. It's only like 50 calories per serving, and I think that's a half a liter. So pretty low cal. But it's the consistency of water. It doesn't have that really sugary fructose, gummy feeling in your mouth. And I've been really impressed with the Scratch Labs hydration mix for electrolytes. So I think for you guys in the summer working in the desert, and even when you're not working in the desert and it's cooler out, but you're walking for 10, 15 miles a day. I mean, you need to replenish. You're evaporating fluids off even when you're not just dripping in sweat. So I personally wouldn't think straight water for an all-day activity like that would be that appropriate. But I also don't think Gatorade and those types of products are appropriate at all either, because it's a lot of added sugar that you just don't need. They've actually shown lately that a lot of athletes that used a lot of the simple sugar like gels, like power gels and Gatorade,
Mm-hmm.
they're showing a lot of endurance athletes that actually have increased cases of tooth decay. because of all the simple sugars that they were taking in. So a lot of people are going away from that because not only is it bad for your teeth, but they're also finding that it's really not that helpful for long-term exercise.
Yeah, I agree that sugar only offers it's a quick energy source. It's there and then it's gone. You burn it real quick. But if you look at it, I don't want to necessarily compare you guys to triathletes or anything, but you're still doing a lot of work, and it's out in the sun. It's extremely draining. It requires a lot of energy. And you look at how athletes use their nutrition, and what they eat before activity is actually extremely important as far as fueling during the activity. And while I won't go as far to say as you guys should be eating 2 pounds of pasta, before you start, you definitely want to stock up on some complex carbohydrates. And as Jason was saying, those last longer. It takes longer for those to diminish as far as an energy source. So you're fueled longer.
All right. Well, those are all really good points, and I think we have a lot of links in the show notes for this episode. All right. So if anybody wants to talk to these guys further about anything, we'll have a link to Jonathan's website in the show notes. Jonathan, do you have any other contact information you want to put out there for the listeners?
Definitely. I'm fairly active on pretty much all social media platforms. You can easily find Beef Demon Fitness as its name on Facebook. On Twitter would be @BeefDemonFTS, and you can find that also on Instagram. Any more personal than that, and my email would be Jonathan@BeefDemonFTS.com. That's my business email if you have any inquiries.
Okay. And Jason?
Yeah, I always encourage people to sign up for different events. I think it's kept me fit. I mean, I've gone farther with it than I ever thought I would. Sign up for your local 5K. Try out a mud run, a Spartan race. Whatever's in your area. Try out a half marathon, whatever. I think it keeps people motivated to train for something when there's a goal on the horizon. An actual tangible goal. Hey, Friday, October 17th, I got a race that I got to be training for. I think it just keeps you going. If you guys want to know more about obstacle course racing, I'm pretty active on Twitter and Instagram @OCR Spartan. On both Twitter and Instagram, you can follow me there and look up SpartanRace.com if you want to know more about those guys and try out your hand at obstacle course racing.
Okay. Yeah, and I've already gotten the notes to put those in the show notes for OCR and Spartan for sure.
Cool.
All right. And Andy, what about your contact info?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram and Twitter @ANDEEZEE. That's just Andy Z. And then I also have a website, godigahole.com. And I don't post too many things about fitness, but a lot of archaeology and a lot of travel. So yeah, hit me up on there.
Awesome. All right. And just a side note, you can hear Andy as well on a new podcast coming up on the Archaeology Podcast Network with Chris Sims, her boyfriend. And that podcast should be coming out shortly. They've got a few episodes recorded. They're going to be really good. So, all right, that's it. Yeah, that's it. We're going to put this one to bed. And if you've got any more questions, feel free to leave them as a comment on the page here and or on iTunes. But if you leave something on iTunes, make sure to let us know because iTunes doesn't let us know that you did that. So, that's it. Like I said, check out the links in the show notes and go do a workout.
Yeah.
Get some.
That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/CRM Arc Podcast. If you like the show and want to comment, please do. You can leave comments about this or any other episode on the website or on the iTunes page for the episode. You can also email me at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com or use the contact form on the podcast webpage. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website or tweet your questions with the hashtag CRMArc @ArcPodcast, or you can tag @ArcPodNet in your tweet. Please share the link to the show wherever you saw it. If you share CRM archaeology-related items on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else for that matter, be sure to use the hashtag CRMArc so the community can see and comment. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can also type the name of the podcast into your favorite podcasting app and subscribe that way. Don't forget to go over to iTunes and leave a review of the show. It helps us get noticed so more people can find our podcast and benefit from the content. Also, send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Also, please consider donating to the Archaeology Podcast Network. Your donations help fund our bandwidth and contribute to our editing costs. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.